just to piggyback on what you just said, right? You talked about self-promotion, right? And there's one article you just came out with called the the spotlight advantage, and you talked about the self-promotion trap. So self-promotion didn't actually, as an extrovert, they didn't come natural to me until I saw one guy. I was walking down the hall with him. Everybody he talked to, he would talk about what he's doing, how he's impacting the work. I was like, man, this is a great way to do this. And I just started that's when I started saying, hey, I can't just sit on my work and let my work talk for me. I must be able to talk about my work. So even with my extrovert self, I wasn't doing it right. So, you talked about the self-promotion trap. Can you talk about that? Because that actually, I really, really enjoyed that part of the article.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll take a step back. So, it's a great deal. It's about visibility and the importance of visibility in the workplace. And as an introvert, my mantra is really to keep my head down, to really work hard, to do the best job I can possibly do, to take care of my customers, and things will work out in my favor. And that's sort of this naive approach to corporate America, where there is a bias towards extroverted behaviors, towards outgoing, gregarious behaviors. And invisibility is important. So as an introvert, how do you balance the need for visibility, because it's important for your work, with this idea that, how do you be humble? How do you bring humility to your work? And at the same time, let people know what you're doing. So it kind of gets back to this humility article a little bit. But one thing introverts are not good at is self-promotion. And I think a lot of us deem as self-promotion as being a negative thing, because we really want it to be about the work. We want it to be about the value that we add. So one thing I learned early in my career is that if I could talk about my work and add value to the company, I had to do that every opportunity I could get. I could never let that pass me by, because in that scenario, I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for the greater good. And that kind of helped me justify talking about myself. And this is back when I still struggled with whether it was right or wrong. But as I continued on, what I really learned was there are a lot of underrepresented groups out there. And being an advocate for somebody is a really important thing. So there are other things that I could do to really practice this idea of promotion in a different way. And one of the ways was to advocate for other underrepresented groups, or underrepresented people, help them, talk about them, talk about what they were doing. And that helped me practice this instead of self-promotion, I kind of reframed it as being an advocate. It helped me practice being an advocate. So when it came time to be an advocate for myself, I was a bit better at it. I'm still not awesome at it, but I was a bit better at it as well. And then the other piece of that whole puzzle is, which I thought was good advice that somebody gave me, was don't think about it as talking about you or yourself personally. Think about it as trying to talk about your awesome work product, because that work product deserves to be seen. That work product can add value to a lot of different people. So don't think about it in terms of self-promotion. Think about it in terms of promoting a product that really deserves to be promoted. So those are kind of the ideas that we baked into that article.
Actually, there's some books that I've read about, when I started talking, I read a book called Brag Better by, what's her name again? Meredith Feynman. And also another book called Self-Promotion for Introverts by Nancy Ankowitz. I don't know if you've read them, but these were great books on how to help you advocate for yourself better and advocate for the work product that you did. David, I'm looking forward to your book. I want you to talk about it and what you're trying to plan for that is.
Sure. So right now, I put this out there on a post on LinkedIn. It was probably one of my most popular posts, even though I really didn't say anything except I'm writing a couple books. And maybe it was kind of my way of putting myself out there and committing to doing it, because it is a big undertaking. It's one of those things that's really scary to think about, because you're kind of laying your soul out in front of a lot of different people. And as an introvert, that's a really, really hard thing to do. But what I've landed on was that there are two books I'm going to focus on. The first one is tentatively called the Extrovert's Guide to Elevating Introverted Leaders in Corporate America. And it is based on the premise that nothing is really going to change from a cultural perspective until the people in power, and in this case, it's the extroverts in corporate America, because extroverts hold most of the leadership positions, from supervisors all the way up to top executives. That doesn't say you can't find introverts in those positions, but there's lots of data to show that it's lopsided to the extroverted side of things. But until that group of people, the people in power, want it to change, it's not going to change. So it's really talking about what it is to be an introvert in corporate America, what leaders can do to elevate aspiring introverted leaders. And I'm incorporating a lot of the work from the articles I'm doing into that. So like on the Spotlight Advantage article, the first part of that article is about bias and discrimination and what leaders can do to kind of avoid having bias come into play, especially this bias of the extrovert ideal, and come into play and inadvertently or unconsciously cause there to be an unlevel playing field for introverts in corporate America. So part of it is raising awareness for all of that. And I think that's probably the first book. I know it's the first book I'm writing. I'm actually probably about halfway through with the Mount, I think, on the first draft. To me, I think it's the easier book to write because I've, a lot of what my passion has been, my experience in kind of trying to level the playing field for introverts. And then the second one, which I think has been written a lot, is this idea that, what do aspiring introverted leaders in corporate America really need to know about themselves and it to be successful? And I think that's been done. And there are a lot of books for introverts and how to be an introverted leader in the workplace. I think a lot of them fall into the trap of trying to convince introverts they need to be more extroverted. And I'm not approaching it from that perspective at all. I am approaching it from the perspective of telling people the truth that there are some hard realities as an introvert that you need to understand about working in corporate America when it comes to bias and discrimination. But at the same time, I'm all about, and I found this true for myself, is I tried to emulate being an extrovert, and I was okay at it, but I was never going to be a successful extroverted leader. It just was never going to happen. And I really only became successful in my mind when I embraced being an introvert, being a strong, capable introverted leader, and embraced my introverted superpowers, my introverted strengths. And that's when I really came into my own. It was still a struggle. It was still difficult. And I was still battling those biases and discriminations, but I was comfortable doing it. I was happier that way. And I think that second book approaches it from that perspective. It's definitely not about teaching introverts to be extroverted. It's about teaching introverts the harsh reality of what it is to be an introvert in corporate America. But at the same time, this is what you need to do, or what I would suggest you do to embrace being an introvert, to own it. And I think that's really, we talked about belonging at the beginning. I think that's the only way you really belong at the end of the day is in a culture where we can be yourself, not one where you have to fit in as somebody else.
And no, I love that. I love that. And I love your artwork. I really love some of these things you're doing with the artwork and the work you're doing with Lee Jordan and the artwork in, David and Boroughs and Jordan partnership. I really love some of the work you're doing. No, David, I really love our conversation because I enjoy the work you're doing, and I think it's a very important work, and I think it's something that our leaders need to take, because I've not seen any work in this space that much, but I really love what you're doing and telling your story from your perspective and helping the future to come up, because that's the most important thing. I always love the fact that you're talking to different people, and David, let me tell you, the greatest compliments people can get is when people talk to you, when you're not there and people say good things about you, and you're one of the people that people have done that every time I talk about you. And so that's a good thing about you. I love talking to you. I love reading your stuff. Thank you for bringing light to this great topic, and I just want to really appreciate you and say hi to the best leader I know in your house. Tell her that I love her too. She's one of the best leaders and one of the best people that I know. And take care. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.